welcome back to our lecture series on cybersecurity, ethical hackers from zero to hero. In the previous lecture, Amir discussed TCP or Transmission Control Protocol. Today, we are going to talk about UDP and port numbers or the User Datagram Protocol. And Amir is going to give a presentation on this lesson. Okay, Amir, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Omid, and thank you for your time. In the last lesson, I talked about TCP and its features and said that TCP is one of the transfer protocols of the fourth layer of the OSI model, which is called the transport layer. Also, I said TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, and to make sure that our packets reach their destination, we need to use TCP. Because TCP has features and mechanisms for sending packets that ensure that the packets reach their destination exactly as they were sent. But as I said in the TCP lesson, TCP is not the only transfer protocol of the transport layer. There is another protocol we call UDP. As a result, when the data reach the transport layer from the upper layers, it's determined whether to use the TCP or UDP for transmission to the destination computer. What is UDP? User Datagram Protocol or UDP is a communications protocol for time-sensitive applications like gaming, playing videos, or domain name system lookups. UDP results in speedier communication because it doesn't spend time forming a firm connection with the destination before transferring the data. Because establishing the connection takes time, eliminating this step results in faster data transfer speeds. This allows data to be transferred very quickly, but it can also cause packets to become lost in transit. In many cases, particularly with TCP, when data is transferred across the internet, it not only has to be sent to the destination, but also the receiving end has to signal that it's ready for the data to arrive. Once both of these aspects of the communication are fulfilled, the transmission can begin. And I explain it completely in the three-way handshake section in TCP lesson. However, with UDP, the data is sent before a connection has been firmly established. And in other words, UDP doesn't require the source and destination to establish a three-way handshake before transmission takes place. This can result in problems with the data transfer, such as lost or out of order packets. With the above description, UDP helps to establish low latency and loss tolerating connections established over the network. UDP is commonly used in time sensitive communications, where occasionally dropping packets is better than waiting. Voice and video traffic are often sent using this protocol because they are both time sensitive and designed to handle some level of loss. For example, VoIP or Voice over IP, which is UDP, which is used by many internet-based telephone services, typically operates over UDP. This is because a static phone conversation is preferable to one that is crystal clear but heavily delayed. How does UDP work? Like all networking protocols, UDP is a standardized method for transferring data between two computers in a network. Compared to other protocols, UDP simply accomplishes this process. It sends packets directly to a target computer without establishing a connection first, indicating the order of said packets or checking whether they arrive as intended. In other words, UDP uses a simple transmission model that doesn't include handshake dialogues to provide reliability, or ordering. Consequently, UDP has an unreliable service. Packets might arrive out of order, appear to have duplicates, or disappear without warning. If we want to dive deep and explain a little bit more about it, like TCP, UDP provides a set of rules that govern how the data should be exchanged over the internet. The UDP works by encapsulating the data into packets and providing its header information to the packets. But unlike TCP, UDP doesn't guarantee the packets will get to the right destinations. This means UDP doesn't connect to the receiving computer directly, which TCP does. Instead, it sends the data out and relies on the device in between the sending and receiving computers to move the data whether it needs to go. Note that both the TCP and UDP protocols send the data over the Internet Protocol network. UDP uses headers when packaging message data to transfer over network connections. UDP headers contains a set of parameters called fields, defined by the technical specifications of the protocol. The UDP header has four fields, each of which is 2 bytes or 16 bits. They are the following: source port and destination port. As I said in the TCP lesson, when two computers want to communicate with each other to exchange data, they use port numbers to tell each other which data goes where. And also, I said the port in question here is not a physical component, but a virtual endpoint between two computers. The source port and destination ports are specified in the UDP header too, which I explain deeply after UDP. For now, we just should know that the port number is a 16-bit number, hence we can have a total of 65,535 ports because 2 to the power of the 16 is 65,535. Packet length. It defines the entire number of bytes, including the UDP header and the UDP data packets for transfer. Checksum. To provide basic protection against transmission errors, TCP and UDP use checksums in their headers. The checksum is calculated by taking a binary value of all the fields in the UDP header and the data, treating them as a large integer, and then performing a bitwise complement on that integer. The checksum is calculated by the sender using a specific algorithm. It's then stored in the header and sent as part of the data stream. The receiving side calculates the checksum on the data that is received using the same algorithm as the sender and compares its value to the checksum passed in the header. If the value don't match, the packet is rejected. Differences between TCP checksum and UDP checksum. TCP checksum is mandatory and always calculated and checked, but UDP checksum is optional. If the checksum field is set to 0, it implies that the checksum is not used, and it means UDP can provide lower overhead in scenarios where speed is more critical than reliability. And in the TCP checksum, if an error is detected, TCP will arrange for retransmission of the corrupted segment. But in UDP checksum, if an error is detected in a datagram and the checksum is being used, the corrupted datagram is usually discarded. UDP itself doesn't arrange for retransmission. TCP vs UDP. As we understand from the above explanations, Transmission Control Protocol or TCP is the dominant transport layer protocol used with most internet services. provides assured delivery, reliability, and much more. But all these services cost us additional overhead and latency. Here, UDP comes into the picture. For real-time services like computer gaming, voice or video communication, and live conferences, we need UDP. Since high performance is needed, UDP permits packets to be dropped instead of processing delayed packets. There is no error checking in UDP, so it also saves bandwidth. User Datagram Protocol or UDP is more efficient in terms of both latency and bandwidth. To have a better understanding of TCP and UDP, we have compared them in the table below. TCP establishes a connection before transmitting data through a process called the three-way handshake. But UDP sends messages without establishing a connection, so there is no handshake. TCP ensures that data is delivered exactly as it's sent and resending packets if necessary. That we call this feature reliable. But UDP doesn't guarantee delivery. Packets may be lost or arrive out of order, so UDP is unreliable. TCP sequence packets so that they are read in the order they were sent, and we say this feature order. But UDP may arrive, but in the UDP, packets may arrive in any order, and there is no built-in way to resequence them. So we say that UDP is unordered. Flow control. TCP manages the rate of data transmission based on how quickly the recipient can process the information. But in UDP, continuously sends data at the desired rate without adjusting for the recipient's ability to receive. Heavier overhead. Due to acknowledgements, retransmission, and connection state management, TCP headers are larger. But UDP has smaller packet headers since there is no need for connection states information or delivery acknowledgement. And UDP is faster than TCP. Applications of UDP. UDP finds application in various fields owing to its ability to transmit data quickly and without the need for connection establishment. Below are some notable applications. DNS queries. Domain name system or DNS, which DNS was the subject of one of our past lessons, often use UDP because they are typically small and require quick response. Streaming services. Video and audio streaming services like IPTV and VoIP use UDP due to their low latency and the fact that the occasional loss of packets is less detrimental than a delay in transmission. Online gaming. Online multiplayer games use UDP because it provides faster data transmission, which is essential for real-time gaming. Simple Network Management Protocol or SNMP, used for managing devices in IP networks, operates primarily using UDP. Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol or DHCP, which is used to assign IP address dynamically to devices in a network, and I explain it in the IP lesson completely, also uses UDP for its operations. Trivial File Transfer Protocol or TFTP use UDP for its simplicity and speed, despite the lack of error checking capabilities. From the above examples, we can understand that UDP can be used in applications where speed rather than reliability is critical. For example, it might be prudent to use UDP in an application that sends data from a fast acquisition where it's okay to lose some data points because UDP doesn't use a time consuming three-way handshake procedure to start the data transfer as TCP does. The UDP just transmits the data and saves plenty of time. Or multicasting can use UDP because it supports packet switching. It means that UDP can support many more clients at the same time thanks to the lack of connection states. As we said, after UDP, it's time to speak about ports number. As I said in the previous lessons, when two devices want to communicate with each other, they use an IP address to specify the address of the destination computer for the sender computer, and vice versa. They do this to determine the destination of the packets. IP stands for Internet Protocol, which I explained in detail in the IP lesson. Also in TCP, I said when two computers establish a connection to exchange data and information with each other, they must use a common language, which is called protocols. In other words, protocol is a set of rules used for communication between devices. As an example, I'm speaking English here and you can understand what I'm saying. The point is you and I are using a specific protocol. Today, there are different protocols that clients use according to the services they want to get from the server. Note that computers don't use only one protocol because a server can be used for different services and programs, such as web server, mail server, file server, and anything else that we will learn about them in the future. However, the server are not so smart that when the client communicate with them and send them a packet, they automatically understand what application and protocol the client has used. As a result, the sender use port numbers to determine what protocol it's using. The server listen to specific port numbers for specific protocols. Because the port numbers are standard numbers, all computers will know them. Suppose Bob transfer an MP3 audio recording to Alice using the file transfer protocol, FTP. If Alice's computer passed the MP3 file data to Alice's email application, the email application would not know how to interpret it. However, because Bob's file transfer uses the port designed for FTP, port 21, Alice's computer can receive and store the file. Now it's time to dive deep into port numbers. The port number in question here is not a physical component, but a virtual endpoint between two computers. I said TCP and UDP use ports to be able to connect two computers that want to exchange data and information with each other. The OSI model is a conceptual model of how the internet works. It divides different internet services and process into seven layers. Ports are a transport layer concept. Only a transport protocol such as the TCP or UDP can indicate which port a packet should go to. As I explained before, TCP and UDP headers have a section for indicating port numbers. Most ports are reserved for certain protocols. For example, all hypertext transfer protocol messages or HTTP messages go to port 80. It specifically determines which program or service on the computer or server that is going to be used. Why do we use port numbers? Ports allow computers to difference between different kinds of traffic easily. Emails go to a different port than web pages, for instance, even though both reach a computer over the same internet connection. While IP address enable message to go to and from a specific device, Port numbers allow the targeting of specific services or applications within those devices. Let's say you live in this house. You will probably want to receive a post here. So what do? You install a letterbox. Now, when the postman comes, your letter can be put through the letterbox. The letterbox gives the postal services access to your house, and the computer works in the same way. The post in this case is the application data, and the letterbox is the port number for that application. It gives access to your computer for that service. Now, instead of a house, it might be running a mail, web, or any other services we want to send data to. How do port numbers work? The port number range from 0 to 65,535. The port number is always associated with an IP address. An IP address is a numeric address, and it's the identifier for a computer or device on a network. Every device has to have an IP address for communication purposes. IP address and port numbers work together to exchange data on a network. For example, if you want to connect to a server over the internet, the IP address is used to determine the geographical location of the server. And a port number determines which service or program on that server it wants to use. Let's say we want to access to web server. We type in the web address or URL of the site we want to visit, and the first thing the computer does is convert this URL into an IP address. This is done by using DNS, but we will cover that in another video. For now, just now, it converts that web address into an IP address. The computer then sends the request to the web server, but this server might not just be hosting a website using HTTP. It may also be a mail server using SMTP or even a file server using FTP. So how does the server know which application to send the request to? Well, these applications have something called a well-known port number assigned to them. For example, HTTP is assigned port number 18, SMTP is assigned port number 25, and FTP is assigned the port number 20 and 21. So because the port numbers are standard numbers, all computers will know about them. When we made our web request, our computer knew we were trying to access an HTTP site, so it added the destination port number of 80 to the TCP header. The computer will also choose a randomly generated source port to receive a reply. It's sent to the web server's IP address and the well-known port for that services. The IP address and port numbers are often written like this, and we call it a network socket. The server will receive this request, look at the destination port number, realize the request is for the web application, and pass it to the application. The server would then respond. This time, the port numbers are reversed, and the destination port is now the randomly generated one, and the source port is our well-known port number 18. Again, when we receive this response, our computer looks at the port number. The port number lets our computer know which application to send it to, and in this case, our browser, and even which tab of that browser to display it on. So that IP address gets the data to the computer, but it's the port number that gets the data to the right application. Port numbers are broken down into three categories. Port numbers from 0 to 1023 are called well-known ports that most people use every day. These ports are registered with the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority or IANA for important network services and applications. For example, port 80 is usually used for HTTP. Port numbers from 1024 to 49,151 called registered ports. These ports are not assigned to specific services, but are meant for application process. Software companies often register this port for their software. For example, port 1433 that's designated for Microsoft SQL Server. Port numbers from 49,152 to 65,535 are called private ports. These are client-side ports that are free to use. These are port numbers that your computer assigns temporarily to itself during a session. Now it's time to talk about some important ports. FTP. File Transfer Protocol is a network protocol for transmitting file between computers over a TCP/IP connection. FTP is a TCP-based service exclusively and uses port 21. TFTP. TFTP stands for Trivial File Transfer Protocol. It's a simple way to transfer file between servers and computers. TFTP is faster than some other protocols, but also less secure. It's generally used for transferring small files. TFTP uses UDP port 69. SSH. Secure Shell is a cryptographic network protocol for operating network services securely over an unsecure network and using it for secure logins remotely. SSH uses TCP and its port is 22. Telnet. A telnet network is a client-server application protocol that provides access to virtual terminals of remote systems on local area networks or the internet. Telnet uses the TCP port protocols and port 23 to establish a connection with remote computers. SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol for email routing between mail server, and SMTP use TCP and use port 25. POP3, Post Office Protocol version 3 for accessing email from a remote servers and use TCP port 110. IMAP, Internet Message Access Protocol used for accessing email on a remote server and use TCP port 143. DNS or Domain Name System for domain name resolution and uses both TCP and UDP port 53. If you haven't seen the DNS video yet, I have to tell you DNS uses UDP for most of its query, but TCP is used when the response data size exceeds 512 bytes or for tasks such as zone transfer. DHCP or Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol for dynamic IP address assignment from a server. DHCP uses UDP and DHCP server uses 67 port and the DHCP client uses port 68. HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol used for transferring web pages and HTTP uses TCP port 18. HTTPS or HTTP over SSL or TLS used for secure communications over a computer network within a web browser and uses TCP port 443. SNMP or Simple Network Management Protocol is an internet standard protocol used to monitor and manage network devices connected over an IP. SNMP is used for communication between routers, switches, firewall, and something else. SNMP used UDP and port 161 is for agents and port 162 is for manager. LDAP or Lightweight Directly Access Protocol is a protocol that helps users find data about organizations, persons, and more. LDAP has two main goals to store data in the LDAP directory and authenticate user to access the directory. Normally, LDAP is a TCP protocol, but Microsoft uses LDAP also over UDP. So it uses both TCP and UDP port 389. NTP or Network Time Protocol is an internet protocol used to synchronize with computer clock time source in a network. It belongs to and it's one of the oldest parts of the TCP IP suite. NTP uses UDP port 123. BGP or Border Gateway Protocol is a set of rules that determine the best network routers for data transmission on the internet. The internet consists of thousands of private, public, corrupted, and government networks linked together through standard protocols, devices, and communication technologies. When you browse the internet data, travel across multiple networks before reaching its destination. BGP's responsibility is to look at all the available paths that data could travel and select the best route. For instance, when a user in the United States loads an application with origin server in Europe, BGP makes that communications quick and efficient. BGP uses TCP port 179. RTSP, or Real-Time Streaming Protocol, which is used for controlling streaming media servers. RTSP is application level and resembles HTTP in operation and syntax, but its main purpose is control rather than delivery of data. In other words, it's a bit like the HTTP used for websites, but rather than serving web pages, it serves live or stored media content. RTSP is designed to play out audio and video over a network and manage the data flow. Think of RTSP as remote control for streaming video or audio from the internet, just like you use a remote to control your TV or DVD player. RTSP allows software to play, pause, stop, or rewind streaming media. It's commonly used in entertainment and communication systems to stream audio and video feeds, including live broadcast and on-demand content. RTSP uses TCP by default for control message delivery due to TCP's reliability, but it has the flexibility to use UDP when the application demands faster delivery and real-time transmission of data. By default, RTSP uses TCP port 554. Conclusion. In conclusion, TCP and UDP are two primary transport layer protocols that facilitate communications between devices over a network. TCP provides reliable, connection-oriented communication, ensuring data integrity and ordered delivery, while UDP offers connectionless, best effort communication with lower overhead and reduced latency. And ports are used in conjunction with these protocols to allow multiple network services to operate uh, concurrently or a signal device. Well-known public ports are reserved for specific services and protocols, while ephemeral ports are used for temporary communication sessions between client and server. Understanding the difference and appropriate usage of TCP, UDP, and ports is essential for design, developing, and managing robust and efficient network application and services. This was my presentation about UDP port numbers. Thank you, Mr.
Uh, okay, okay, Amir. Thank you for your presentation. Do you talk about port number 3389 for remote desktop protocol? I can't remember that. I think that you missed it.
33,
Remote desktop protocol.
I just talk about SSH and
No,
Telnet.
no, no. Remote desktop is another protocol for RDP for Microsoft Remote the Microsoft Remote Desktop protocol that enable remote connections to other computer, typically over TCP port 3389. It's in another important port. Okay, you have 3 minutes for rest and prepare for 27 question. Okay, see
Okay.
you 3 minutes later.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Okay, welcome back to our session. We were back with 27 question about TCP, about UDP, and some TCP question and port numbers. Okay, first question. Please answer me with very short answer. Okay, answer to this question with short answer. Okay, the first one. What is UDP?
UDP is User Datagram Protocol,
Okay, and what was that?
and it's one of the transport layer of the fourth layer of the OSI model.
Okay, it's a protocol that sends data in small packets called datagrams without establishing a connection with the recipient uh, mm, beforehand. Okay, and it is faster or slower than TCP.
It's faster.
Okay. Second question. When would you use UDP instead of TCP?
We use UDP in application that they are time sensitive, and faster is more important than reliable.
The best answer is uh, we use UDP for application where speed is crucial and occasional data loss is acceptable, like online gaming, live streaming, or real-time data transfer. Okay. Number three. What are the key what are the key differences between UDP and TCP?
TCP is a connection, but UDP is connectionless protocol. And TCP is reliable and ordered protocol, but UDP is unreliable and unreliable.
Okay, perfect. TCP guarantees delivery. The UDP is faster but doesn't guarantee delivery. Okay,
Yes.
next question. Four. What are the limitations of UDP?
In the UDP, because UDP is unreliable, if some packets lost, UDP doesn't transmission.
What about error checking?
There, in about error checking, UDP use just checksum, but not other error checking mechanism.
Okay, good. What are some applications that use UDP?
I named them.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Give
like
me an example.
FTP, FTP, DNS, and SNMP, and online gaming, streaming services, and something else.
VoIP. What about VoIP calls?
Yes, VoIP, IPTV.
Okay, okay, that's good. What are port numbers?
Port numbers is virtual components that when two devices want to communicate with each other, sender computer sends data by port number, and the destination computer receive the data from its specific port numbers.
Okay,
And we use,
can you give me an example in real world?
yes, of course. For example, when I search for a web page,
No, not a
my
computer. In real world, for example, when give me a real world example, not in
okay,
computer
okay,
science.
okay. For example, as I said in my presentation, when I want get a post or letter from post office, I put a letter box in my house, and that letter box uh, could post access to my house.
Okay. Uh, or they act like room numbers in a building, directing data to the right service. Okay. What is the range of port numbers?
Okay, port numbers broken into three categories: well-known port numbers, and that is from 0 to 1023, and registered port numbers that start from 1024 to 49,151, and private port numbers that start from 49 49,152 to 65,535, that called
Okay,
private
okay,
ports.
that's good. Okay. How do port numbers work with UDP?
Excuse me, can you repeat your question?
How do port numbers work with UDP?
Okay, in UDP, for example, if UDP wants to send data in the sender computer or sender device, it's open up randomly port numbers, and it's specified as its protocol that it wants to use for port numbers in destination computer.
Okay, what is better to say? When sending data with UDP, the source and destination port numbers are included in the packet header. Okay, the server
Okay.
identifies the service based on the port and forwards the data accordingly. Okay, next question, sorry. Number nine,
Yeah.
what happens if you send UDP data to the wrong port?
To the wrong port.
Yeah. Okay,
Um,
the server won't recognize the data and may discard it. This can lead to errors or unexpected behavior in the application. Okay, next question. What are some well-known port numbers and their corresponding services?
I
Okay,
should take it.
wait. What is the port HTTP?
HTTP is 80.
HTTPS?
HTTPS is 443.
FTP?
FTP is 20
Just
and
just say just
21.
said just tell me number, not a
21.
question again. Okay, SSH?
Um, SSH was
22
uh,
telnet,
okay. Uh, Telnet was
23 SMTP,
25.
DHCP,
Yeah, 68.
67 and 68, NTP,
Yes. What?
NTP,
NTP 123.
1 to 3. Okay, DNS,
53.
RDP,
RDP.
3389. What is, okay, we are going to advanced concept. What is checksum and how does it work with UDP?
Checksum is a error checking mechanism that we use it for transmission errors. That if a data change in the routes, we can understand by checks.
Mm, okay, UDP, but your answer is true, is correct. But UDP can use a checksum to detect errors during transmission. It's important. During transmission, the sender calculates a checksum based on the data and includes it in the packet. The receiver recalculates the checksum and compares it to the received value. If they mismatch, the packet is dropped. Okay, 12. How do applications ensure data integrity with UDP?
The application, because UDP use checksum mechanism, and if there was an error during transmission, application could understand the errors,
Some
and
application,
they
no, it's good but not complete. You should learn about this question and search about that. Please note
okay.
that some applications implement their own mechanisms for error checking and retransmission, like sequence numbers or application level acknowledgements. So it's very important. Okay, 13. What are the security? Uh, Let me change this question. Uh, could you talk about security implementation when using UDP?
Okay. Most security implementations about UDP is that because UDP uh, doesn't create a connection, a specific connection between two ends, the hackers can use UDP for DDoS flood attacks.
No, I talk about security implementation. UDP doesn't encrypt data. It is susceptible to eavesdropping and tampering. For example, when you use Wireshark to capture uh, packets, firewalls and encryption can be used to mitigate this risk. Okay, what are some alternative protocols to UDP?
Um, As I know, we can say UDP is an alternative protocol for TCP, but I have no
No, no.
idea.
UDP is UDP, TCP is TCP. Okay, you should learn about SCTP. It's very important. Stream Control Transmission Protocol. offers features similar to UDP but with uh, reliability and order delivery. It's like that UDP TCP work together. SCTP. Note that, please.
I know that, yes, of
15.
course.
How can firewall be used to control UDP traffic?
Mm.
If you didn't know the answer, please
Yeah,
let me know.
okay.
Okay,
Sorry, I don't know that.
firewall can filter UDP traffic based on source and destination ports, IP addresses, and other criteria, helping to control access and security. Okay. Uh, Next question. How does online gaming use UDP?
And how does they use UDP? I
How
don't know
does
the answers.
online gaming use UDP?
I don't know.
Online games prioritize speed over perfect data delivery. Online gaming need a speed to real-time gaming. UDP allows for faster updates and responsible and response in real time, even if some packets are lost. For example, you play Call of Duty with your friend. Imagine that
Yes.
packet lost is not important, and you can continue your game like television. How does next question? How does streaming benefit from UDP? Live streaming. I mean that.
Okay. Because in live streaming, we prefer that if error happen, we continue our streaming and don't retransmission it. And the speed is more important than reliability in live streaming.
UDP delivers data quickly with minimal delay, ensuring a smooth video and audio playback during live streams. And you should know that packet loss uh, is not important like TCP. I mean that occasional packet loss might be less noticeable than buffering caused by retransmission in TCP. How does DNS use UDP for lookups?
Okay, because DNS lookups are a small
I don't
packet.
answer. Wait. I don't uh, question uh, why. How does DNS use UDP for lookups?
I think in DNS sends its lookups fast and it's one and it's exceptional.
Okay. That's good. How can you identify application using UDP on your network?
I don't know the answer.
It's easy. By monitoring. Network monitoring tools can show UDP traffic flow and associate port numbers, helping you identifying which application are using them, like Wireshark.
Like Wireshark, for example. Okay.
20.
Uh,
What are some common security risks associated with with open UDP port? Again, what are some common security risks associated with open UDP ports?
uh, could we say the DDoS attack?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's good. Unsecure UDP port can be vulnerable. Sorry, it can be vulnerable. I means that the port is with the security assessment. Uh, you got that this port is vulnerable to denial of service DOS attack, port scanning, and unauthorized access.
Mhm.
With so it means that your port number is have a vulnerability, and you can send a DDoS attack. Okay,
Okay.
21. How can you protect your network from UDP based attacks?
And we could use firewalls or check our open ports. And if it wasn't necessary, we close the open
Okay,
ports.
okay, bravo. Firewalls, intrusion detection system, and keeping software update helps mitigate risk, and check only open necessary UDP ports and restrict access them. Restrict access them means that uh, uh, just work with just connect with VPN, or restrict with uh, access just with IP address, your IP address from remote computer or something like that. Okay, what are some advanced uses of UDP beyond basics data transfer? What are some advanced uses of UDP beyond basic data transfer?
I don't know.
Yes, you know, but you didn't got the question. UDP can be used for real-time communication protocol like voice over IP and multimedia conferencing. That's it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
with low latency is crucial. Okay,
Yes.
23. How does UDP multicast work for group communication?
Okay. Because the UDP doesn't
No,
connect.
no, not why. How does UDP multicast work for group communication? How does? Not why.
UDP uh, could I think, excuse me, could you explain me?
UDP multicast allows sending data to multiple destinations without individual connections. It's useful for streaming or group messaging. 24. How does UDP hole punching work bypassing firewall?
I don't know the answer.
It is out of your search area and learning area. Just I want to know if you know it's good. You know or not?
No, I don't know.
UDP hole punching allows applications to establish connection through firewall by temporarily creating opening for specific ports. 25. What are the future trends? What are the future trends and developments related to UDP?
I have no idea about it.
Research is ongoing to improve security and reliability in UDP-based protocols, with maintaining its low latency and speed advantages. Okay,
Okay.
the important question about TCP. What is TCP flow control? Please give me a very short answer.
Okay. TCP flow control is a mechanism that When two computers want establish a connection, they use it. And it's for that sender computer understand the capacity of a receiver computer about receiving and processing data same.
Uh, the best answer, as you told, TCP control is a mechanism that regulates the rate at which data is sent between two devices to avoid overwhelming the receiver and causing congestion. In simple terms, it acts like a traffic cop on the network, sorry, ensuring data flows smoothly without overloading the receiver. It's important. Please note this question. It's very important. Okay, the last question. What is port scan?
Port scan is an application that we could use it to find open ports in destination computers.
Okay, it's true, but a port scan is a network reconnaissance technique used to identify which port on a computer or network are open and listening for connections. It is like knocking on the different doors for a building to see which ones are open and who might be inside. For example, imagine a computer or network as a building with many doors. Doors means ports. Each door has a number, and different services or applications use different doors to communicate. For example, web traffic typically comes through door number. What is HTTP port number?
HTTP is 80.
Okay, 80. While email use door number, SMTP port. What is SMTP port?
23,
25. 23 is for
25.
telnet.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
so we have two doors, 80 and 25. A port scan is like sending someone to knock on each door and see if anyone answers. If the door is open, it means that the corresponding port is active and listening to the connection or for connections. If the door is closed, it means that port is not in use. Okay, okay, Amir. Thank you for uh, your presentation and okay, have a nice time and okay, thank you for watching our video. Uh, please, for support us, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. And please do not hesitate for any question. Thank you. Bye now.